Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Viewers across Southern California were left stunned on Sunday night after a pair of suspects led police on one of the wildest pursuits in recent memory, carjacking multiple vehicles, including a tanker truck, all while the entire thing was broadcast on live TV. According to the LA County Sheriff's Department, the bizarre ordeal began around 10:40 p.m. on August 10th in the San Fernando Valley. Deputies first spotted a dark-colored pickup truck that had been reported stolen at gunpoint. When they attempted to intervene, the suspects began driving dangerously, pinning in other vehicles and even trying, unsuccessfully, to hijack two of them. A short time later, though, the chaos escalated dramatically. The suspects cornered a tanker truck on Interstate 5 near Sylmar. After the driver bolted from the cab in panic, the suspects took off with the massive big rig and headed southbound toward downtown Los Angeles. For a time, the giant truck weaved through high-rise areas of the city, circling streets packed with pedestrians. Several commercial drivers watching the chase on TV called into news stations to help police, saying the vehicle likely was not hauling anything dangerous and looked like a milk truck. Thankfully, authorities confirmed the tanker was empty at the time. By about 11:30 p.m., the suspects ditched the truck and immediately carjacked a white pickup truck before taking off once again, this time towards Boyle Heights. From there, the pursuit became even more reckless, with the suspects at one point driving the wrong way down Interstate 10. During the chase, one of them fired shots at California Highway Patrol officers, making the situation all the more dangerous. The pair briefly stopped on surface streets in Boyle Heights to swap drivers before continuing on. They then carjacked yet another vehicle, this time a black sedan, near Lincoln Heights, where officers ultimately lost track of them around 11:50 p.m. The sedan rolled to a stop under a 101 freeway overpass after the suspects bailed out on foot. Police later said they recovered a loaded firearm from the back of the Ford F-250, the first vehicle the duo had stolen earlier in the night. As of this recording, the two suspects remain unidentified and at large. The LAPD has warned that they should be considered armed and dangerous. Anyone with information is asked to contact the LAPD immediately.
Authorities in Polk County, Florida say that a lakeside gathering turned into absolute chaos over the weekend after a massive brawl erupted between a group of young boaters in front of stunned families and children. The incident happened on August 9th at Lake Winterset, a popular spot just a couple of miles from Legoland, Florida. According to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the fight broke out at the lake's sandbar, an area that has already been a frequent source of complaints from nearby residents. The whole thing started when one man was punched twice and knocked out cold. Disturbing video released by the sheriff's office shows him flopping face down to the ground, completely unresponsive, as punches suddenly start flying all around him. At one point, a woman in a pink bikini can be seen desperately trying to perform CPR on the unconscious man. Meanwhile, the chaos spread into the water. A man in a large gold chain tried to hold another person back, only for both of them to trip into the lake. Then, out of nowhere, the man who threw the first punch dove into the fray and started attacking someone else. Before long, yet another man was left floating face down in the water. When it was all over, 8 people, identified as Mason Land, Nate Land, Peyton Eli, Timothy Gooding, Richard Carden, Garrett Orr, Garrett Hiltebidel, and a 17-year-old who has not been named publicly, were arrested. Sheriff Grady Judd says they're each facing charges including rioting, affray, trespassing, and disorderly conduct. The sheriff slammed the behavior as both dangerous and disgusting. In a press conference this week, he warned that the days of tolerance for rowdy gatherings on Lake Winterset are over. In his words, quote, "The conduct is reprehensible, and obviously you don't believe us when we try to warn you. So you have unleashed the teeth of the dog, and now we're going to start biting you, just like we bit these guys here." Officials say that the Winterset Sandbar has been a recurring setting for issues going back years, with complaints ranging from public indecency to loud parties. In May, the Polk County Commission even passed an ordinance aimed at keeping boaters away from private shorelines. That new law was still awaiting final approval when the weekend fight broke out. In the meantime, Sheriff Judd says his office is stepping up enforcement, including arrests for trespassing if anyone sets so much as a toe onto private property. He also hinted at the possibility of stricter noise ordinances in the near future. For now, the 8 men arrested remain charged in connection with what the sheriff's office is calling one of the most brazen and dangerous disturbances they've seen on the lake in years.
A Wisconsin man has admitted to a bizarre and disturbing crime this week after he was caught on hidden camera contaminating his female co-worker's drink with Gorilla Glue. According to prosecutors, the case unfolded earlier this year inside an office at the Wisconsin Exposition Center, a state-owned exhibit hall in the Milwaukee suburb of West Allis. That's where 35-year-old Joseph Ross and the 36-year-old victim shared a workspace. The woman told police that she began to suspect something was wrong with her drinks after repeatedly noticing a strong chemical taste and smell. On at least one occasion, she even became sick after drinking from a can of Coca-Cola left on her desk. Convinced someone was tampering with her beverages, she decided to take matters into her own hands. On March 20th, she hid a surveillance camera beneath her computer monitor, and sure enough, within just 30 minutes of setting it up, the camera captured damning footage. The video showed Ross slipping on a pair of latex gloves before squeezing drops of Gorilla Super Glue into the victim's can of Coke. Unaware that he had been caught, Ross later told investigators he had only placed a supplement in the drink. But when police searched a trash container near his office, they found the used gloves wadded up with the glue bottle and its cap still inside. Ross was arrested and eventually charged with a felony count of placing foreign objects in edibles. This week, he pleaded guilty in a Milwaukee courtroom as part of a negotiated deal with prosecutors. Under the terms of the plea, Ross is barred from ever owning or possessing a firearm, and he will lose his right to vote until his civil rights are formally restored. He now faces up to 3.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine when he's sentenced on October 9th. Officials at the Wisconsin State Fair Park, which oversees Exposition Center, have since clarified that both Ross and the victim were employed by a vendor, not the park itself. Still, Ross has been issued a formal no trespass order from the facility. As for the motive behind the strange crime, authorities say that remains unclear.
A small Virginia community has been left desperately searching for answers after a horrifying and completely random home invasion last week left the mother of an up-and-coming country music star dead and her husband seriously injured. The terrifying ordeal unfolded on August 3rd at the Timberville home of 62-year-old Holly and 65-year-old Michael Hatcher. The Hatchers are the parents of rising country music artist Spencer Hatcher, whose career has been gaining national attention in recent years. According to the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office, the nightmare began when a man named Kevin Moses Walker, a 41-year-old from Maryland, suddenly broke into the Hatcher family home just before midnight. Once inside, he launched into a brutal attack. Holly was stabbed multiple times, while Michael was also badly wounded. Somehow, despite his injuries, Michael managed to escape outside to the family's driveway, where he was able to retrieve a handgun from his vehicle. Moments later, he fired a single shot, killing Walker and bringing the terrifying rampage to an end. First responders arrived at the scene to find Michael in the driveway with visible injuries and Walker lying dead nearby. Tragically, Holly was discovered inside the home with fatal stab wounds. She could not be saved. Investigators have since revealed disturbing details about Walker's movements in the days leading up to the killing. Just 2 days earlier, he had rented a campsite at Endless Caverns in nearby Newmarket and purchased a large knife from a local Walmart. The following day, his vehicle was found abandoned after he crashed it into a store near the campground. At the time, Virginia State Police deployed patrol cars and even a drone to search the area, but Walker had disappeared. Perhaps the strangest and most unnerving part about the whole thing is that the crime appears to have been completely random. Walker has no apparent ties to the Hatcher family and no known criminal history. He was described by a number of people he interacted with in the days leading up to the murder as polite and unremarkable, someone who had seemingly just come out to the area because he was interested in exploring the local caves. Sheriff Brian Hutchison told reporters that his officers had nothing prior to go on that would suggest Walker was a threat, explaining, quote, "There was no indication of any violence or potential for any violence from the offender that the Virginia State Police became aware of throughout that investigation." At a press conference following the murder, Sheriff Hutchison described the case as unlike anything he had seen in over 3 decades of law enforcement. In his words, quote, "Speaking personally, this is 31 years in law enforcement for me. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career, just the way the unusual, unique, and just crazy situation that this turned out to be." Hutchison said that he and other members of law enforcement are still working to figure out exactly what caused Walker to snap and carry out the awful attack. For his part, Michael Hatcher gave an emotional statement saying, quote, "There's going to be questions that will never be answered, but all I can tell you is we've cried, we've hurt, and we've hugged, and we have found more love than we have ever known has existed between us and between you. Spencer also addressed the tragedy, announcing on social media that he was canceling several upcoming performances, including shows at the VOA Country Music Fest in Ohio and the Rockingham County Fair. He wrote in part, quote, "It is with a heavy heart and overwhelming sadness that, due to a monumental loss in our family, I must cancel my upcoming shows." Meanwhile, Holly has been remembered by her community as a beloved teacher who spent nearly 2 decades working in local schools. In a statement, Rockingham County Public Schools described her as someone who, quote, "poured her heart into her work, positively impacting countless students and colleagues. Her loss is deeply felt by the entire RCPS family." At the time of this recording, investigators say that they are still searching for answers about what motivated the bizarre and senseless attack. So far, though, police say that they can't explain why Walker targeted the Hatchers.
Authorities say the search for a missing child has ended in tragedy this week after the body of a 10-year-old boy was found buried in a shallow grave, and his own mother has now been arrested in connection with the death. The awful ordeal began on August 6th when 10-year-old Jaden Spicer was reported missing from his home in rural Breathitt County. His disappearance triggered an urgent days-long search effort involving police, volunteers, and members of the local community. In the early stages of that search, Jaden's mother, 33-year-old Felicia Gross, appeared to be pleading for her son's safe return. In a handwritten statement shared with local media, she wrote, quote, "We want him safe at home. Please, if anybody see my son Jaden Spicer, please report it to the Jackson Police Department. We love him very much. Please do the right thing. Call the police. Please pray for us." Members of Jaden's extended family also rallied the public for support. His aunt, Samantha Brunty, even launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for a cash reward that could, quote, "help close the case and bring Jaden home." But just 6 days after he vanished, on the afternoon of August 12th, investigators located Jaden's remains in a heavily wooded area of Breathitt County. The discovery was made after Gross allegedly confessed to her role in his death and led authorities to the site herself. According to police documents, Gross admitted that she had given her son sleeping medication, after which she panicked when he became unresponsive. Instead of calling for help, she allegedly placed his body in a plastic tote and buried him in a shallow grave. Officials say she later attempted to coach Jaden's siblings on what to say during their police interviews. Following her confession, Gross was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and falsely reporting an incident. She is currently being held at the Kentucky River Regional Jail. Court records show that this is not the first time Gross has faced legal trouble involving her children. She previously served a 1-year jail sentence for endangering the welfare of the minor. At this time, Jaden's remains have been sent to the state medical examiner's office in Frankfort for a full autopsy. Police say the investigation is still ongoing and have declined to release further details. For now, what's clear is that a small Kentucky community has been left devastated after a search that began with prayers and hope ended with the unthinkable.
Authorities say a police officer is dead and the gunman responsible has also been killed after a shocking shooting attack outside the headquarters of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention last week. The terrifying ordeal unfolded around 4:50 p.m. on Friday, August 8th, when 30-year-old Patrick Joseph White opened fire at the CDC campus located right next to Emory University. Investigators say he unleashed more than 180 rounds in the attack, spraying bullets at buildings and vehicles. During the chaos, DeKalb County police officer David Rose was fatally shot while responding to the scene. The 38-year-old officer was rushed to hospital in critical condition, but tragically did not survive. Rose leaves behind his wife, who is pregnant, as well as 2 children. In a statement, county officials called it a dark day and described Rose as a man who served with courage, integrity, and unwavering dedication. Meanwhile, White himself was found dead on the 2nd floor of a CVS pharmacy across from the CDC, having died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after exchanging fire with officers. According to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, White had recently broken into his father's locked gun safe to steal weapons used in the rampage. 5 firearms were ultimately recovered, including the rifle he carried that day. Written documents found at White's home revealed his growing anger and obsession with COVID-19 vaccines, which he blamed for his depression and thoughts of self-harm. GBI director Chris Hosey said that in the documents written by White and recovered from his parents' home, he wrote about wanting to make the public aware of his discontent with the vaccine. Authorities say White's mental health had been deteriorating for some time leading up to the shooting. He had previously expressed thoughts of self-harm, prompting law enforcement to be contacted, though it seems not much was ever done. In fact, records show at least 10 emergency calls had been made from the White family home over the last 2 years for issues ranging from domestic disputes to threats. During the attack, White's father, Kenneth, frantically dialed 911 multiple times, telling dispatchers he feared his son was the gunman. In one call, he said, quote, "I'm very worried that he might have been involved in this shooting today. I can't get any information from anybody. I've called the DeKalb County 911 number 3 times and left detailed information, and no one ever called us back." Security at the CDC campus has since come under heavy scrutiny. Officials say White initially attempted to drive inside but was stopped by guards. Instead, though, he was able to park near the CVS across the street and began firing from the sidewalk. His bullets were powerful enough to pierce the CDC's blast-resistant windows, forcing employees to shelter in place. More than 500 shell casings were later recovered at the scene. In the aftermath, federal health officials, including U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., toured the CDC site and met privately with Officer Rose's widow. Kennedy released a statement saying, quote, "No one should face violence while working to protect the health of others." However, many have since pointed to Kennedy's own rhetoric on vaccines, arguing that his statements about vaccine science have inflamed tensions surrounding the topic and are at least partially to blame for incidents like this. A former CDC employee, Tim Young, said in a statement that years of this kind of rhetoric about vaccines and public health were bound to, quote, "take a toll on people's mental health," and, quote, "leads to violence." As of this week, the FBI says there is no indication of a broader threat tied to the CDC or vaccines, but confirmed they are taking violent rhetoric against public health institutions seriously. Director Hosey, meanwhile, urged the public not to focus on the shooter's name or image, but instead to remember the officer whose life was taken in the line of duty.
Residents in a Los Angeles neighborhood say they've been living through months of torment after a local man began blasting deafening train horns from his property, noise so loud it could be reportedly heard for miles. Now, after finally being arrested, the man is vowing to keep doing it. Police say the bizarre saga centers on 50-year-old Gary Boyadzian, an unemployed auto technician who has lived on Peach Avenue in Van Nuys for more than 20 years. Neighbors claim that since at least June, Boyadzian had been blaring industrial-sized train horns from his yard almost daily, sometimes in long bursts lasting 20 to 40 minutes at a time. Some of the horns were even strapped to trees outside his home and powered by an air compressor. One neighbor, Robert Donovan, described the horns as having a reach of 3.5 miles, loud enough to rattle windows across the neighborhood. On Wednesday, August 13th, LAPD officers responded to yet another round of complaints. At first, Boyadzian had actually answered the door and spoke calmly with police, insisting the horns were a cry for help and claiming that he had been wronged in a legal case that cost him his job. At the time, officers left without making an arrest, but just a few hours later, the horns went off again, this time prompting police to return with backup. Video shows Boyadzian yelling as officers cuffed him on his front lawn, screaming, quote, "They arrested me for blowing a horn. Did you see how many of them showed up at my house yesterday like I'm a f***ing criminal?" Inside the home, officers discovered 10 massive train horns. He was arrested on suspicion of disturbing the peace and interfering with an officer. Neighbors say that when Boyadzian wasn't setting off the horns, he often blasted his home alarm system at full volume instead. Others described him as wandering the neighborhood at night, working on cars or using power tools in his driveway. Despite being booked into jail Wednesday night, Boyadzian was quickly released the following morning. And in interviews afterward, he made it clear that he had no intention of stopping. He vowed during one interview, quote, "Yes, I'm going to keep on blowing." Neighbors, meanwhile, say they're more worried about the 50-year-old's mental health than anything else. Clara Espinoza, who has lived in the neighborhood for 24 years, admitted she only recently realized where the noise was coming from, telling reporters, quote, "Oh, it's Gary's house." Others described him as a good guy doing bad things. City Council member Imelda Padilla's office has since promised to work with police to restore peace and order to the block and to make sure Boyadzian is also offered help.
What began as a normal afternoon of back-to-school shopping at a Texas Target store erupted into chaos and violence this week when a 32-year-old man opened fire in the store's parking lot, leaving 3 people dead, including a child. The attack unfolded just before 2:15 p.m. on August 11th at the store in question in North Austin. Police have since identified the suspect as Ethan Nineker, investigators say Nineker randomly attacked 24-year-old Target employee Hector Machuca, shooting him as he collected carts outside the store. Nineker then turned his attention towards other victims. The driver of a Jeep Cherokee just managed to get away as Nineker began shooting again. Sadly, his next targets were not so lucky though. Moments later, Nineker allegedly went over to a gray Toyota 4Runner, where 65-year-old Adam Chow and his wife were sitting with their 4-year-old granddaughter. Both Adam and the young girl were fatally shot, while Adam's wife sustained minor injuries. After the attack, Nineker stole the Chow family's SUV and sped out of the lot. Witnesses described a scene of panic, with shoppers and employees sprinting for cover. At a nearby Jiffy Lube, workers immediately locked the doors after seeing people running from the parking lot in fear. What followed was nearly an hour of chaos across Austin. Police say Nineker smashed into other vehicles on the highway, then attempted to carjack the driver of a water truck. When he couldn't get it started, he allegedly chased a man at gunpoint before fleeing again in the stolen 4Runner. Minutes later, he abandoned that SUV after a crash and allegedly carjacked a Volkswagen. Nineker then reportedly attempted to break into a Waymo self-driving car before throwing a brick through the window of a home belonging to an acquaintance from his Bible study group. By 2:58 p.m., reports came in of a naked man wandering through a backyard. Officers soon located Nineker, who had stripped his clothes off in a portable toilet, clutching a Bible and telling police he was Jesus. When he refused commands, officers tased him and took him into custody at 3:06. Officials say the gun used in the shooting was obtained from family members. At a press conference, Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis said Nineker had serious issues and pointed to possible mental illness as a factor. Court records reveal a troubling history, including past arrests for domestic violence, assault, and driving while intoxicated. Nineker now faces 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of first-degree murder, with additional charges pending for assaults, vehicle thefts, and property damage. He is being held on a $2.5 million bond, and a judge has ordered a mental health evaluation. The loss of life has devastated the community. Hector, described by coworkers as hardworking and kind, was taken to the hospital but did not survive. Adam and his young granddaughter were pronounced dead at the scene. Police emphasized that the victims were chosen at random. Authorities and community members are now grappling with the senselessness of the attack. As one Target shopper told reporters after learning of the tragedy, "We got really, really lucky, and some people didn't." Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.